Hello and welcome to Arsenal Analysed. I'm JC. I hope you're doing well. Today I bring you tactical analysis on Arsenal 3, Tottenham 1. What a great start to the weekend. North London is red. Bragging Knights sitting firmly in Arsenal's camp. If you are looking forward to breaking it all down in today's video, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and get that notification bell button on because there is plenty of content coming on the channel with 8 more games in October, and you won't want to miss it. But let's kick things off with a few thoughts on the starting lineups from today's victory from none other than Arsenal. So looking at the starting 11, there were a few question marks heading into the fixture. Mind games, of course, in what is such a big game. Arsenal's biggest game, arguably, in the season. Arteta not wanting to give anything away in his press conference with regards to injuries or availability. Likewise with Conte. People did ask, will Kieran Tierney be the better option at left back because he is better defensively to cope with those Tottenham counter-attacks? He did opt to go with Zinchenko, who has been out of action due to injury. Very nice to see him back. But we both know that this is something that is different in terms of what Kieran Tierney offers compared to Zinchenko, operating as more of an inverted fullback, making those numbers up in midfield, creating overloads, and even furthered by Jesus when he drops deep too. Thomas Partey, another one where we didn't know if he was going to feature, having gone away with Ghana on international duty and then having to come back. Simply put, when Thomas Partey plays, Arsenal are a much, much better side. And lastly, Martin Odegaard, another question marks over his availability. But arguably, this is Arsenal's strongest 11 when these players are fit. This 11 here that you can see on screen, this is Arsenal's best 11. However, in saying that, we do have great squad depth. And the substitutions used by Arteta today were very, very good to get important minutes in the legs in what is going to be a huge October, as already mentioned. With regards to Tottenham, the only question mark for them was Kulusevski, who has been a very, very good player this season. Unfortunately, he was unavailable, or fortunately, however you might want to look at it. A hamstring injury picked up away on international duty. But I would say that if there was a position in which Spurs could afford to potentially lose a player, it would be a winger, because they have 3 very good players in that position, Richarlison and Song coming in on this occasion. But apart from that, I wouldn't say there were too many other question marks for either side, both fielding very, very good starting 11s in my opinion. And as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, Arsenal continue to field the youngest average aged team in the Premier League at 24 years old. Now, a new addition on the channel is going to be some tactical analysis using some tactical boards. So let's go ahead and bring that up now and have a look at the shape that was used by both sides today. So as we can see here, these are both the starting 11s. Spurs opting for that 3-4-3. Arsenal going for a 4-3-3, if you will. Now, what happened at times when Spurs were essentially out of possession, they were very narrow to start with, and they would get 5 men behind the ball. Both of their wingers would drop deep as well, that being Son and Richarlison on this occasion. And it made it very, very difficult for Arsenal to operate between the lines, and Arsenal continuing to use those front 5, if you will, in Granit Xhaka, who has been absolutely phenomenal this season, operating in that half space. What you would then find is Thomas Partey sort of sitting on the halfway line with Ben White tucking in and Zinchenko tucking in here. At times, what we did see is this formation. There was a lot of space out here on this left-hand side and this right-hand side, which is when Spurs did counter-attack in that sort of final 15 to 20 minutes of the first half. You would see their wing-backs operating in these positions, sort of forcing Arsenal back, if you will, into some really, really difficult decisions operating in these spaces here. Fortunately for Arsenal, we did get the breakthrough. We've got some good pictures to show you in a later part of this video with Bukayo Saka essentially drawing out all of these players and creating space for the ball to come in here to Ben White and eventually Thomas Partey, who hits the ball into the top corner. But the point of this video here is that when Arsenal are in possession, they pushed Spurs right back, which was good to see. What I didn't understand is why Spurs were set up like this for the majority of the game. We did occasionally see a formation like this with Zinchenko coming into midfield. creating those overloads. As I said there, those 5 players, it's a great operation there for Arsenal. But for the majority of the game, we did see this as Arsenal. Now, one thing we did sometimes see is we saw Xhaka out here. We saw Martinelli here. We even saw Martinelli here sometimes, Gabriel Jesus. So these rotations between these 3 players has been absolutely fantastic. And what that does is it pulls players out of position and it causes absolute havoc for the opposition. So I just wanted to show you how Spurs were operating at times. Now, when Arsenal were defending, it was the typical sort of 4-4-2, or at times, especially in that first half, we were actually playing with more of a 4-4-2 when defending. Now, what this allows Arsenal to do when counter-attacking is it gives us Arsenal 5 players to counter-attack with. So we've got Granit Xhaka here who can burst in that half space, likewise with Martin Odegaard, sometimes coming on the overlap and swapping inside with Saka. And then these 5 players, as I mentioned, they can all get forward really, 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 really nicely with that single pivot here of Thomas Partey. But where problems did occur for Arsenal, as I just mentioned, I do want to touch on it very, very briefly, is when Arsenal were pushed forward and we were in these types of situations, we had the likes of Kane operating in these spaces with Richarlison, and then it was their wing backs getting up in here. And there were times where Martinelli, especially in that first half, he did let Emerson Royale go quite a few times, which was a little bit of a concern, especially with Zinchenko operating in this half space here, partnering Thomas Partey. It did feel as though that sometimes Spurs were looking to exploit this right-hand side. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Is this something that you've enjoyed in today's video? Do you think it's something that you agree with? Is it something you want to see in future videos? Let me know down in the comments below. But bringing you even more information with regards to stats and shape, Arsenal comfortably winning the game with regards to possession with 65%, a total of 22 shots. Arsenal really making the most of possession. There was a point in the first half where when we did concede the penalty and it was 1-1 and we allowed Spurs to grow back into the game, it was that question, you know, are we going to really kind of kick ourselves for not making the most of the amount of possession and the pressure that we had? Because Arsenal did have quite a few opportunities beyond the goal that Thomas Partey scored. But you can see here, just in the stats alone, the blue ones on the right-hand side are the areas that Spurs dominated in, and then the ones on the left-hand side in green are the ones that Arsenal dominated in, and there are only 2 that fall in the Spurs camp. So Arsenal very, very dominant. And on the left-hand side, we can see here Arsenal's shape, and pretty much very reminiscent of what we just looked at on that tactical board, with Ben Wright pushing sort of beyond the halfway line, Zinchenko coming in slightly inside as more of an inverted fullback. And we can see there Martin Odegaard and Granit Xhaka just slightly beyond the fullbacks, as well as Thomas Partey making up that 5 attacking threat. And when we compare that to Spurs, very, very deep. They played very deep throughout the game, not only when they had a back 5, but also when they resorted back to a back 4 when they were down to 10 men. Very, very deep, very much relying on that counter-attack, which did work for them, as mentioned, in their sort of last sort of 15 to 20 minutes of the first half. And a lot of what Arsenal done well today came down the left-hand side. And for those regular watchers, if we look at the graph there in the bottom left-hand corner, we can see that deep orange on that left-hand side. 9 times out of 10 this season has actually been with Bukayo Saka. And Martinelli exploiting Emerson Royale before he got sent off was clearly a plan of Arteta's today. Martinelli really did fancy himself. And again, if we have a look at that graph at the bottom centre, the majority of the play in this game today, 45% of the ball when in possession was in the opposition third, that's Spurs third. So this doesn't make good reading for Spurs. A lot of people were saying coming into this game that they were slowly dropping out of form. And maybe, just maybe, this was the game where Conte really did get exposed for the first time. I think Chelsea done a very good job early in the season, maybe a bit of a blueprint or a template for teams moving forward. But Arsenal really have hammered that nail home in today's game. Now, looking to break down the goals, we can see here in picture number 1, as I alluded to on the tactical board there, we can see that white oval shape with Saka and 2 Spurs players. When he had the ball initially before playing it to Ben White, he drew 2 players in, creating space for Ben White, which then, when Ben White received the ball, it sucked another player in, which allowed Thomas Partey, you can see there in picture number 1, the amount of space that he had to hit that first time. And boy, what a clean, sweet strike that was. But again, looking at picture number 2 here, just kind of highlighting and reiterating what we went over on that tactical board, we can see just how deep Spurs, pretty much on the penalty spot line, if you will, with that back 5, not really allowing Arsenal to operate between the lines because their midfield, which is literally just in front of them, maybe 4 or 5 yards. It made it really, really difficult for Arsenal to break them down. But what it did allow Arsenal to do is go from left to right, in and around that 18-yard box. And just like when we played Brentford, sometimes, at this point of the game, Arsenal dominated for quite a while, hadn't, quite got the rub of the green, whilst we did have opportunities. Sometimes you just have to take a long shot and produce a moment of quality, just like Fabio Vieira did against Brentford. In that game, obviously, we were already winning 2-0. But in this game, we were looking to break the deadlock. We were looking for a reward for all of that pressure and possession. And we were rewarded with an absolute world-class strike from Thomas Partey. More of that, please, moving forwards. In picture number 3, we can see here highlighted in that yellow circle, Bukayo Saka has the ball. He does take a shot. He has been known to do this. We've seen it a couple of times this season already. Something that is slowly adding to his game, coming inside and really utilising that left foot. Now, one thing that I found rather strange, again, this is the problem you have when you're playing so deep as a team. You're allowing the likes of Jesus and Granit Xhaka, who you can see just in front of Hugo Lloris. Now, if the ball isn't parried in the right way, which in this case it wasn't, if a Spurs player isn't getting there first, it's allowing and inviting that pressure, which is unneeded. And it all came from them playing so deep. Now, 9 times out of 10, Hugo Lloris is a good goalkeeper. He parries it out to, I think it was Romero or Bentancur. He's literally got less than a second to kind of get his feet right. And by that point, Jesus is breathing down his neck. Bentancur, or the defender, couldn't actually get control of the ball, which allows Jesus in. If it wasn't Jesus, you can see there literally right next to him in picture number 4, the zoomed in picture, it's Granit Xhaka. So it could have been either of those two. Spurs really creating their own problems today, unfortunately for them. Picture number 1 on this second slide was the final goal. We can see here in the yellow circle, we can see here Martinelli, who has or is about to receive the ball from Thomas Partey. And that yellow arrow coming inside is the run he eventually makes with the ball before passing it to Granit Xhaka that we can see here in picture number 2. That touch takes him inside the 18-yard box. He has been absolutely phenomenal this season. Granit Xhaka, that is. Likewise, Martinelli for a matter of fact as well. And he manages to get himself another goal this season. An absolutely phenomenal performance. But in picture number 1, we can see here just highlighting that back 4 that Spurs eventually went to when going down to 10 men. But what I really like about this picture is, Arsenal are, 2-1 up at this point, for example, and we could have been, resting on our laurels. We could have been happy in possession, playing the ball from left to right, right to left, so on and so forth. But we can see here in this picture that there are 6 Arsenal players looking and ready to press against that back 4 of Spurs, really going through the jugular, if you will. And this is what we need to see more of when Arsenal are in possession, when Arsenal are right up for it. We need to be scoring more and more goals and really, really putting teams to the sword as and when possible. In picture number 3, we kind of skipped over it between the sort of first and second goal of Arsenal's. Was the penalty, which was given for a foul on Richarlison from Gabriel. Now, this is either the second or third individual error from Gabriel this season. The other one that comes to mind was the one against Fulham, where he gave the ball away to Mitrovic. Now, we need to see less and less of this. Another game today where we weren't punished, fortunately, for a mistake. When we play against other teams, we're not always going to have maybe that luck or that quality. Sometimes it's just not your day. We need to be cutting these errors out. And whilst Gabriel is a very, very good defender, and I think he did generally have a good game today, he needs to cut these out. There was no need to go to ground, in my opinion. Richarlison is coming inside on his so-called weaker foot, if you will, and there are other Arsenal defenders around him. He gave a penalty away, which resulted in a goal. Allow the player to just take the shot anyway. It gives an opportunity for a goalkeeper or a defender to make a save. And whilst there's no guarantee that the penalty will be scored, you don't want to be putting the referee in a position where he has to be making these decisions. And it could have been one where a player sent off, maybe not on this occasion because he's not last man and it's not a reckless challenge, but there will be situations where this happens, which brings me to picture number 4 before we look to wrap things up with key players of today. I just want to get your thoughts on picture number 4. Do you think that this was a sending off? I do think it's a horrible challenge. You know, he's not really in a position where he needs to pressure Martinelli, but to be playing, well, I would say playing the ball, but it's not, is he? He's dragging his studs down the back of Martinelli's leg, above the ankle, no intention to play the ball. It is serious foul play. I was half expecting a yellow card in real time. It was produced as a red card. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Was it a stonewall, guaranteed red card, or do you think it was a little bit harsh? Now, moving on to my player of the match. He was named BT's player of the match and also Arsenal man of the match on the website, which is Granit Xhaka. On the right-hand side, you can see a number of statistics from the Arsenal players today. Other players that I thought played exceptionally well were the likes of Saliba, Martinelli, and also Jesus. Partey, again, as mentioned earlier in this video, when he plays, Arsenal simply play better. So by all means, pause the video and have a look at some of their stats from today. But Granit Xhaka, for me, easily man of the match. That heat map highlighting the importance of his role. There's kind of like 2 lines from left to right, one on the sort of wing position, if you will, playing more out wide, sort of when he's swapping with Martinelli, and then another sort of red line from left to right, slightly inside, operating in that half space, which is where I feel he's been really threatening this season. But he's bagged himself a goal, 1 key pass, 87 passing accuracy, 1 completed cross, 3 long balls completed as well, 3 shots in total, which is great, just showing how much more advanced he is, how much more attacking he is as well, winning only 1 duel but involved in 2, which is quite low actually. I thought that might be a little bit higher. But that is going to about wrap things up for today's video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the new addition with regards to the tactical ball, which will over time get better and better. But for now, North London is red. Like the video if you have enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. And don't forget to turn that notification bell on. For now, I'm JC, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe and take care.